Holy shit, we just got done watching Planet with!
What time
Finally!
is it? It's probably like 5 in the morning. It's already getting late.
somewhere around there. This show, we watched the first 4 episodes of this back in the summer season.
When it was airing.
Back when I was doing the seasonal, what was it? It was Anime of the Week.
Yeah.
And this was like the only show, this and Goku Dolls and High Score Girl were the only shows I did not drop of that season. High Score Girl later got dropped, and we haven't even tried to finish Goku Dolls yet. But we finished Planet with, which is probably the show I was the most excited about of anything we had left. So it's all downhill from here, basically, on Finish or Fail.
Yeah.
There's nothing else that looks like it's going to be as good as this. But it was great.
Maybe not as good, but like I still think there's some. I'm still excited to see what's left. But yeah, I fucking love this show.
It's really fucking, it's fun and cool and interesting. And what did you think? Do you want to start us off? Do you have any broad feelings about it?
Really love the characters. At first, I wasn't so into them because I felt they were kind of gimmicky, but like once they fleshed them out and we saw more insight into them, I really liked the characters. I love the character designs; they're fucking dope. I love the aesthetic of the show. It did take a while for it to grow on me because it was kind of like conflicting. The show is kind of like serious but fun at the same time, but like the way it looks is like
I would say that like the thing about the show is that the design sense is really good. It's just the way that it's like delivered on that's less. I mean, not even that it's bad, because the show looks better than most of the shit that we talk about on this series. But like,
yeah.
I would say that like the colored sense is a little weird.
It's weird, but I wouldn't say it's bad. It's alien.
You know, there's the CGI at times is like
gross sometimes.
But at the same time, it's kind of played up almost, where it's like, because of the fact that the things that are CGI are so otherworldly and cheesy and like deliberately fucking weird, that like it's not so bothersome. Like, the worst is probably the dragon, just because of the super like low poly-ness of it.
But it still looks like rad, even though
Yeah.
it looks disgusting. Its tail is like holographic, and it's cool. Like, it's this giant space gunky
It's obviously
creature.
meant to be ugly. Like, it's meant to be a disgusting, hideous creature, and so the fact that it is literally, like, technologically ugly doesn't take that much away from it. I don't think that the show has necessarily the strongest, like, shot compositions and stuff like that, but like there's nothing wrong with it. Like, it's perfectly fine. It's just not like as exceptional as the writing is.
Yeah,
you know, like,
yeah, definitely.
I wouldn't say to come to this show for the visuals or the action choreography or anything like that. The mech designs are really interesting. Like, they're very
unique.
They're not the type of mechs that you're gonna go, wow, these are really badass, I'm gonna go buy toys of them. But like, it was honestly shocking that they animated as well as they did, because they look almost overly complicated, and like, I got the feeling that the reason that this, because this is written, this show was written by the guy who wrote, most famously, Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer and Spirit Circle, and a bunch of other manga, but like, I had wondered at first why he made an anime. Like, why do it as an anime? Why make something so much more difficult to create? And I think it probably had a lot to do with the mechs, because, like, there's no way he could have done, like, that complex of designs, page after
without
page,
CG.
and made the art look comprehensible at all. Like, mecha generally doesn't translate that well to manga. It's better as an animated genre. So, like, you know, I think that's probably a big part of why it was an anime, so it could have those designs. And they're really interesting. Like, again, I don't think that this is a show I'd come to for aesthetics, but what the aesthetics do for the narrative is powerful. Like, the weird... I love, like, wacky sci-fi. I love it when, like, space is just full of, like, dumb-looking bullshit, you know, like Space Dandy or Rick and Morty and stuff like that. Like,
yeah, I think that's really kind of, like, what shines about this show in particular.
Yeah. Because it's, like, it's not... It's hard sci-fi thematically. Like, the things that are talked about and the things that are going on are, like, It raises the kind of ethical concerns that you would usually see in sci-fi. It raises the dimensional travel and all this crazy stuff that like it doesn't bother coming up with like a realistic way that humans would have progressed to this technology. It's just like, hey, the universe is a fucking crazy place, and somewhere out there is a race of Kigurumians who are just animal-shaped
exactly, the
people.
fucking Kigurumians.
And they have
furries are the future.
Yeah, they have a galactic council and they rule over the galaxy, and it's just like, I can accept all that because it doesn't make it any harder for me to buy into that it's wacky and goofy than if they tried to make it look realistic, because I know the future's not going to look like any interpretation we come up with. Like, you know.
So why not have fun with it and make it, like,
right.
have its own aesthetic?
Like, as much as you could be like, oh, like, Star Trek feels real, like it did in the 80s, and now you look at it and you're like, well, none of the paneling would be like this, and, like, you know, we've got smartphones now, like, devices are all about getting smaller, not bigger, and it's just like,
But the show's not about the future.
Go
it's
crazy
about
with it.
The evolution that's happening right now.
Yeah.
So, I think, like, because of that, you can keep coming back to the show and being like, oh, this is, like, cool, and it's not going to be outdated.
Yeah.
So
the sort of heart and soul of this series is this ethical battle of, like, there's two factions of this, like, galactic police force, I guess, Nebula. They basically, like, watch over the galaxy and try to help the advancement of any species that is part of the evolution of love. Basically, if you are a species that has evolved past, like, warring, like, you've evolved to the point where you have, like, psychic connections with other people and, like, basically, like, reaching a higher level of empathy that allows you to transcend your abilities.
And there's two choices. They can either seal it and stop the evolution before it becomes a problem and wars start, or they let that species, like, evolve further.
Yeah, basically, if you prove that you have evolved out of love, then you get to join their council, because all of them are, naturally pacifistic. But if you evolve into a species of war, they try to seal off your emotions so that you will not use those powers. Or, in the case of this dragon who was working with Nebula, he basically decides, because of the fact that this race of the Siriusians, the people of the planet Sirius, like, they attacked this other planet called Riel, and were doing, like just genociding them, basically, to try to take over. And the dragon went, you know what? Fuck these guys. They're a race of hate. They're never going to be good. I'm just going to annihilate
their
them.
planet.
Yeah. And so it's interesting because I'm describing this as though this is, like, the plot of the show, which it is, but you really learn most of this about halfway through. It's implicated in the beginning, but this show is structured sort of around, right away, it's crazy and magical and raises a lot of questions, but, like, the scope of the story expands massively as it goes. Because at first it's just about, like, aliens are coming to Earth, and the main character has no memories, and he's woken up in this weird place with, like, a weird cat person and a green-haired maid girl, and, like, it just seems really surreal and wacky. But as you learn about what's going on, all of that stuff almost becomes passé because of how much bigger the picture is, you know? Which is something I think that this author, like, I haven't read Lucifer and the Biscuit Hammer, and I've only read the first volume of Spirit Circle, but, like, I already know exactly what this guy's writing style is like between that and this, that, like, he's very cut and dry about things. It's just, like, weird, surreal, dramatic, and crazy stuff just happens. You know, like, if a character's gonna die, they're just gonna die. Like, there's not gonna be fanfare, it's not gonna be, like, build up. It's just gonna be like, oh, that guy's dead now, or, like, oh, the world is different completely in, like, a second, and, those moments are what keep it shocking and, like, keeps you on your toes. And it's almost like, I don't want to say nihilistic, but it's just like, the attitude of the story is almost flippant. It's just like, this is the way things go. The universe is chaotic. Life is chaotic. Shit happens, And it gives the whole story just like an unexpected twisting and turning nature that is stronger in the first part of it. Like, the first 4 episodes, as I remember it, I was always just like, man, what the fuck is going on? Up until, like, episode 4, they finally explain the ethical conflict at the heart of it. And then from there, they expand and explain the rest of the story, and then it kind of is like, okay, well, now I get why this conflict is happening, what's really going on, and then it just kind of goes along till it resolves from there. It doesn't really continue to add new crazy bullshit into the story, aside from explaining it. I've been rambling too long. You have anything you want to talk about this show?
I kind of feel differently about the first 4 episodes. I still liked it and thought the show was interesting and wanted to know where it was going, but I thought it was, like, too silly.
Yeah.
For the kind of content that it was. Like, it just, like, I'm not interested in a show that is this silly the whole way through. So, once the characters, like, once the plot started getting, like, unraveled, or, like, revealed, I guess that's a better word. Like, once we actually knew what was going on, it was, like, fuller for me. And then there was, like, this one scene where they, like, played homage to Ghost in the Shell by having, like, the green-haired girl, like, fall back in the building, and then I was like, oh shit, this show is lit. Like,
that was what it took, was that moment?
I mean, yeah.
I knew you were gonna mention it on
It was really cool. Like, because I
excited.
wasn't, like, paying that much attention until that point. And then I started getting, like, I was, but because we had watched so much of it before we started rewatching it, it was like, I didn't really know who was who. I was kind of like, I like the show, but I don't really, like, love it.
Right.
And then that just, like, got me really, I guess.
I was just, like, I was really into how sudden and flippantly, like, I guess because I am a very, like, nihilistic thinker, and, like, what I like from this type of sci-fi is that, like, blink and you'll miss it crazy things happening. Like, the Rick and Morty kind of attitude of, like, just keep going, just keep running, just, like, don't look back, you know, and, like, in those early episodes, it's just like, you'll see a fucking crazy thing appears and, like, a person flies into it, and then you're in that person's memories, and they're, like, being soothed so that they will no longer have, like, any drive to fight, and, like, everything looks crazy and feels crazy, and you don't really know what's going on.
No idea what's going on.
But
like,
you can extrapolate from a lot of it.
It's
you
like
know?
a snake on top of rice.
And then just, like, like, for instance, the beginning of the show, like, it's sort of established that there's this dragon that destroyed the main character's home planet, and, like, you're kind of expecting that to be, like, the final boss, which it is, but, like, one of the characters he's fighting turns into a dragon like that, like, in episode 3 or 4. And so it's just, like, the stakes elevate so high, like, all of a sudden, and it's just, that was what was keeping me interested in those early episodes, was, like, seeing how the power escalation was just, like, ramping up so fast, how, like, the characters were getting, like, wiped out left and right, and I say wiped out, even though no one, well, spoilers, if you couldn't tell already, for the fact that we spoiled half the shit, like, people don't really die, but, like, they were losing right off the bat, because, like, episode 1, it's putting you in this position of, like, you've got the main character, he's working for these 2 people, you've got 7 opponents, all 7 are wiped out within, like, 5 episodes, you know, and then, like, the guy who's positioned as, like, the big bad, the big final opponent, he beats in episode 6, and that guy dies, and so by the end of episode 6, all of the conflicts that have been established so far are already over. The show is basically over at that point.
Yeah, that part of the show is.
Yeah. So then episode 7, they introduce the rest of the backstory. They're like, here's everything that led up to that. And
you get the full picture at that point.
Yeah, and that's where it kind of hit a lull for me, because I was kind of like, well, alright, we need a new story now. Like, we've literally resolved everything. And the new story starts building up, and basically it's like, well, because again, this whole time there had been this conflict between the Sealing faction and the, what's the other faction called? The one that the main character's on. Like, the Kigurumians have 2 warring factions who have 2 different ideologies about how their approach to humanity. One wants to seal humanity off, the other wants to protect humanity and let them just, like, figure things out on their own and see how things will turn out once they, you know, once they actualize or whatever. like, become fully accustomed to their psychic abilities. But the dragon is like a third faction in a way. He just like and like the whole conflict of the first half of the show is basically a shadow war between these two factions. But then after that's resolved, then it just becomes the battle of those two factions again. It's just like, okay, well, now that the dragon stuff is out of the picture, we still have to resolve, are we going to save, like, are we going to seal humanity or not? And in the end, this comes down to a bunch of fistfights. You know, it's like the mechs, they're like, well, I feel this way, guess we gotta fight about it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I appreciate the way that, it's always undercutting the drama of this by having the guys, like, they don't really want to fight, they just have to, so everybody's very gentlemanly about it. It's, like, kind of funny the way that the fight is portrayed.
The
but
dialogue that the cat and the dog have is, like, funny, and it's
all the dialogue is great in this show.
I really like that part because, like, we haven't really heard the cat except for being explained by the princess with the green hair, and, like, to just see them kind of banter back and forth, it's like, oh shit, these guys are great.
Yeah, I guess the character development that happens in the second half of the show is all good. It's just that, like, because of the fact that there is a fairly large cast, and it's very much like each character gets their little spotlight moment. It's like, usually when they get sealed away or whatever is when you, like, see, you know, what their trauma is, like, what's
yeah, and that's kind
them,
of, like,
you know?
what the beginning of the show was, and I just, like, remember not being into that particular way of exploring the characters.
Yeah.
Because, like, once they did it the first time with the guy who was, like, a firefighter, right? That was the first guy. It was like, okay, I get what they're doing here.
Right.
And, like,
and then
how
you kind of watch
complex
it, like,
each
4 more
character's really, like, how complex really are they?
Right.
It wasn't until they got to, like, the old man and, like how, like,
I think it helps that the old man is, like, the best character.
he is the best of that group of characters.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's just, like, it was, like, that was the best way I think they could have handled that, but then once they move forward after that, it's kind of, like, how are these characters coping? How are these characters, like, handling it afterwards? I liked that character development more, because it was, like...
I agree that I think the weakest part of the early episodes was that characterization, just because, like, it gives you, you know, information about why these characters are acting the way they do. You just don't really care about these characters.
No, and there's too many of them to really care about them.
And even in the long run, like, I do think that when it gets around to, like, the green-haired guy and the pink-haired girl, like, they're a little bit better developed and their stories are not presented in the exact same way as everyone else. But then, like, for instance, when she gets sealed and then he's just like, well, fuck it, I'm sealing the rest of the world now because, like, I'm pissed off that she was sealed, and I didn't really feel like that was a strong motivation on his part. Like, you know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Like, it just seemed, he was like, okay, well, like, if she's sealed, then I guess the rest of you will be too.
I think the thing was, like, that's all he cared about was her.
Right, but then, like, what is his motivation to seal everybody else? Like, how does that follow from that?
I think he just was, because she was sealed, that he just decided that, like, this was what was right, because it was what was happening to her.
Like, I guess he thought she seemed happy that way, and so he was gonna
yeah, because they both were, like,
else.
kind of dealing with his brother's loss, something that neither one of them have really been able to move forward, and he was just like, I don't care about the rest of the world, because, like, it's just about her.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna seal everybody away, and that was, like, the only time he really went all out. Right. Was when it came down to her and her future.
Yeah.
So
it just, like, I loved the moment because, again, like, first half of episode 7 that just tells the backstory, I like that because I like the backstory. But, like, the second half of episode 7 and all of episode 8 is mostly, like, setting up for the next conflict. Everything with the green-haired girl coming to the main character's school and, like, hypnotizing him, I didn't really get that.
It's really fucking weird. And they never, like, explained what kind of race she is or, like, what the deal is with her.
And it didn't really go anywhere. It was like she was infiltrating to try to fuck with him, but he just turns it down.
Yeah.
Like, in the end, like, they find out that she is who she is, and they're like, alright, she's like, alright, I challenge you guys to battle, and he's like, nah, fuck it. And it's like, well, what was all the, like, stalking him and, like, flirting with them at school and all that stuff. Like, what was that really about? I guess it drew him and the other girl closer.
Yeah, I think
which is important.
they needed to show that relationship more, and also like the green-haired girl, like you don't really know that much about until then.
Yeah, I guess it made her into a character,
it makes her,
but it also made her like a kind of incomprehensible, weird character.
It made her. I think it just made her seem a little bit incompetent and a little bit like it gave her some
which was
more,
probably on purpose.
Yeah, they wanted to give
incompetent.
her some like negative traits, so
right.
They're all fully fleshed out characters. It's not like this person is just an ideology. It's like this is kind of an idiot. Like
and then from there, there's
how do you feel about her like eyebrows? Like they're just 3 lines.
I didn't notice.
I think the eyebrows are really interesting in the show, but like I don't know. Every time she was on screen, it was just like
I don't pay
3 eyebrows.
Nearly as much attention to eyebrows as you do in the shows I
mean,
watch.
Anime is usually just a line for the eyebrows.
Yeah.
So whenever like any character is given an eyebrow, it usually like means something. Like that character, the character has thick eyebrows. It usually means they're like strict and like they they got bushy brows. But if they have 3, it's like
unless they're like Mugi from K-On!
Yeah, or they just have like giant fuzzy eyebrows. But that's like somebody who's like soft,
Yeah, she's a
like
fluffy girl.
Fua eyebrows.
So he seals the world. I loved that because that got back to like again what I like about the show, those like sudden, insane, dramatic moments, and like so he seals the entire planet Earth,
and in the blink
but
of
then
an
it's
eye.
resolved like 3 seconds later. The main character just tells everybody on Earth like, raise your hand if you don't want to be sealed, and I guess everyone raises their hand, or at least enough people that he just kind of breaks the seal. He just kind of like tells everybody to like not give in, and they're like, yeah, fuck it, and then they break the seal on the Earth. So like at that point, the battle on the like emotional, ethical level is already over. Like humans have already defended themselves. They've already basically won. So that's when it comes down to this fist fight between the two, the cat versus dog. And it is like an entire episode long of them like just beating the shit out of each other, and eventually the good guys win and the conflict is resolved. And then they're like, all right, well, the dragon's going to wake up in 5 years. So then there's a time skip, which is great. I love that there's a time skip. I love that the characters age up. We get to see how,
some of the characters do not look good aged up, though. Some of them look really janky. Like the red-haired girl and the pink-haired
the red-haired girl should not have got a haircut. It did not look good on her.
They just, like, some of them did not look so good. And the main character himself kind of, like, looked a little weird.
It took me a minute to realize that he had just dressed himself as his older brother. Like, I think they just tried to make him look like his big brother.
I think it's just, like, his hair is just, it does not work on, like, a
adult
man.
But yeah, so they time skip to 5 years later, and it's like, I like that they establish how the humans are interacting with the aliens, that, like, all these guys have developed, like, really incredible psychic powers. He's just, like, dating the girl from high school. Like, not even a question. Didn't have to see it. Like, we know that was gonna be happening. So, of course.
It's obvious.
So I like all that. But, like, again, when it comes to that final battle with the dragon, it's basically just, performing the thing that was inevitable. Like, we knew how this was going to resolve, and
like
it resolves in the way you would expect.
It's like the satisfying closure that you want.
Yeah, I suppose so. I just felt like I had already auto-completed it in my head, and, like, watching it play out, I was just like, okay, well, it happened,
I liked when the what's her name? The green-haired girl with the pigtails, the goth lolly, as they call her.
They called her a goth lolly, but she's in a maid outfit.
She's just in a maid outfit. It's really funny, but, like, when she thanks the dragon, because...
Yeah, that's a good scene.
His actions, like, did save her entire race, even though there was a lot of evil out of it. And just, like, I felt, like, a lot of catharsis for that. And it made me, like, really like her character.
It's a good scene.
I just liked when they went inside the dragon. It was, like, really inventive and really cool. And they had, like, the fucking buildings falling down.
I have to admit that, because you haven't seen the whole second arc of Gurren Lagann.
I know,
but, like,
I'm sorry.
A lot of the imagery is, like exactly the same. Like, the scene... First, it starts when the cat and dog fight, and like they blast the smaller mech into the bigger mech, and then like they leave the smaller mech, and then it's just like them on foot. Like that happens in the last episode of Gurren Lagann,
no.
and like the scene where all of the psychics like have upgraded versions of their mech. That happens in Gurren Lagann, and like the scene where they go inside the bad guy and like find him as like a human.
Yeah.
That happens in Gurren Lagann. So like for me, it was a little bit of like, I like it. It was distinct enough that it was its own thing, but like it was very Gurren Lagann.
Yeah.
And just Gainaxi in general, where like them going through like the wormholes and stuff is like something that would happen in a Gainax show, which I'm not complaining about at all because I'm a huge Gainax fanboy, but
it's definitely better than the ending to Darling in the Franxx.
Oh God, yeah, it's similar in that regard.
It's similar, but like.
I think this show nobody would have been surprised that this show ended this way. Like,
No.
Darling in the Franxx, everyone was like, what the fuck? Aliens, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, well, it's a Trigger show. What did you expect? But with this show, I think they telegraphed it a lot better. It made sense in the narrative.
And it was less cheesy.
Yeah.
IMO.
But yeah, it is it's a satisfying ending. Like, all the things you would want to happen. Everybody sort of wins. They prove the power of love. It's been a while
since I've seen a good ending in anime.
Yeah, you don't get a lot of them. I was almost surprised that it wrapped up so. It's almost like it all went according to plan, just to be like, yeah, like it didn't, like, there's no reason to make it different than this, because like again. The ideological conflict at the heart of the show, like, there is no real way to make it more complex. There was nothing that could have been necessarily added to the conversation to make it, like, to suddenly change your mind about what was going on. So in that sense, I do think it makes sense to just resolve out the plot, like, as it should be. And if it has to be a 12-episode TV anime, then this did about as good a job as you could possibly do of maximizing on that time. I would have wished it was 2 episodes shorter, maybe.
Yeah.
But, like, just cut down on some of the action scenes that were unnecessarily long, or, like, reiterating facts that I already understood. But then I'm a persnickety asshole, and I always want everything to be shorter than it is.
Just dope. Like, I don't mind an episode of fighting as long as it's not, like, reused footage.
There's fun moments, and, like during the big battle between them, like, the, like, big finishing part is great, when he, like, jumps into the mech and knocks him out, and, like, the part where the old man comes in and uses the big samurai strike was fucking awesome. The old man is the best character. He's the most fun to watch. But, like, just, there are parts where it's just, like, 2 beams of light flying around in space for a little bit, like, just
yeah, I know.
shoot, and I was just like, alright, we don't need that. Like, I get that it allows the song to play all the way through, and, to get to the tense moments that match the tension in the song, but it's just like, yeah, I'm looking at a light show for a little bit here, and, like, it just doesn't add anything to, to the episode to have that, but all the dialogue between the characters during the fights is good.
It's great. They fucking go into space.
Yeah.
And they drink their energy drink that gives them hungover. It was cool.
I just kind of wish that there were more consistently, like, weird moments. Like, I'm remembering in, like, episode 1, where there's a whole scene of, like, a character very slowly trying to look under the skirt of a Lucifer the Biscuit Hammer figure to try to see her panties. And, like, that's, like, the scene that sticks out in my mind the most from the early part of the show. Or, like, how the first time the ideological conflict between the 2 Kigurumians is introduced, it's, like, in this weird sequence where they're, like, both on a stage, and, like, they're having this conversation on stage in, like a mind space of the main character, and there's just not as much of that after that point, like, it doesn't have as many, like, really trippy scenes, or, like, just, I guess the early part of the show is more unnerving, and I missed the unnervingness, but at the same time, like I said, there wasn't really a way to make it more complex, so as long as we're just playing out the narrative, seeing all the characters through to the end, it's just that I'm not as attached to these characters as I would like to be in a story like that, Like, if we're going to be writing it out all the way and just resolving everyone's arcs, like, if I cared more about the
Yeah.
character. Instead, what drew me to the show the most was like the ethical conflicts and the weird trippy stuff. But again, it's not that I'm not trying to knock the show at all. I'm just explaining why I'm giving it an 8 as opposed to a 10, or like the 9 that you're giving it. I just think that like I was just slightly less engrossed than I hoped I would be. But I still had a great time. Um, I guess part of it is also just that, like, in those first 4 episodes, like, the first time you see him get eaten by the giant cat and turn into big cat mode, it's just like, whoa, holy fuck! But then that just becomes a thing they do all the time,
you can't make it surprising
Yeah.
after they already do it. But, like, the fact that they went that far is cool.
Yeah,
Like,
it's awesome. It's
and it always is, like, a fucking delight to see it.
Yeah, all the ideas are great. The animation of that is so cool. Like the way that they like drop down and eat a guy and then they turn over and they're big once they've turned over. Just an awesome way to show a transformation sequence. All the mechs turning big was really cool. Like every time one of them evolved, I was like, "Oh, sick!"
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm trying to think of what else I really liked. Do you have any other like things who's your favorite character other than the old man?
Probably the vegetarian princess.
Yeah.
She's fun.
She's a cute.
I also like the cat.
Cat Sensei is probably my favorite cuz I just love that he proposes to the dragon like I am going to make this kid become like part of the evolution of love to prove to you that Siriusians can like that you fucked up basically, and then like in the end he comes to the dragon and he's like, see? Told you. And the dragon's like, you came all the way here just to say that, you fucking asshole. And I was like, yeah, of course he did.
He has to.
And when you hear like the cat robot has this very like serious expression on its face. In that backstory scene, I felt like the cat robot became recognizable as, like, why does it look that way? Like, it matches his personality. It feels like it is, like, whereas, him as just his normal self, it's just a fucking weird cat. But, like, when you know what he's actually like, and then you see the mech as he's saying these things, you're like, okay, I get why they designed it to look that way.
Motherfucker.
How it matches his personality.
The same with the dog.
Yeah, and the dog being voiced by Norio Wakamoto was a nice treat. I'm a huge Norio Wakamoto fan because I've been, watching him for. I knew he was the first voice actor whose name I ever learned like 12 years ago, and yeah, it's probably the most dialogue he's had in a show for like a while. And it was a great performance as always. Lots of fucking. All the parts where like they would turn super giant and shit was always a lot of fun.
One kind of criticism is the ED and OP were
super generic.
Lame.
Super generic OP and ED. It's interesting. It's like because this show's by JC Staff. Like it's not a show I would expect them to do. Like,
no.
And I like JC Staff, but like, and they've done plenty of original anime over the years. They made Revolutionary Girl Utena once upon a time, but like. This is a particularly weird JC Staff show, and like they are capable of bringing a level of quality like this, but I don't think they're capable of bringing an even higher level of quality that would have made this show a 10,
Yeah, I do agree, but I'm happy with the way they handled it, like with the resources they got and the people they had.
I'm just thinking about like if this show had the same team who made Bubuki Buranki behind it. Did you ever see that show?
Oh yeah, I saw that show. That show's lit.
Like, I ended up dropping Bubuki Buranki because I didn't like the
clusterfuck.
story.
I had no idea what was going on. I watched
the visuals were so. That was the best looking like CGI like 12 episode fighting show I've seen, and like if this show had looked as good as Bubuki Buranki, it would just be even better, But it's not bad looking or anything. It definitely gets better as it goes. I think the early episodes had more like dry shots, and it felt like they had a better sense of what they were doing as it went along, kind of. Maybe because it was less weird and it was therefore easier to like comprehend what was going on. I don't feel like I have anything else to say. Good show. I give it a decent to strong 8.
I'm gonna give it a late 9. I liked it a whole lot.
See, we can disagree. It's possible. Alright. This will probably be its own video, right? It's over 30 minutes.
Probably.
See you in the next one.